Alright, so we're going to start off modeling this creature by utilizing primitives, just like you would in any standard 3D application. So let's go over to the left side of the interface, and from among the Objects section of the Tool panel, we're going to select the Primitives tool. Now if you look over to the right in the Tool Options panel, we can see all the different available options and parameters for this particular tool, including all the different primitives. Even though we have a nice default set of primitives to utilize, one of the more impressive aspects to this tool set is the ability to access any model from our models palette to utilize as a primitive. This gives us the unique capability of applying a freeform deformation lattice to the object, regardless of whether it's a default primitive or a model that you choose from the models palette. We can also add an arbitrary number of control points if we like. In this instance, rather than a default primitive, I chose something from the models palette that was a little bit more triangular in shape. I'm now going to hit the 5 key on the number pad to switch to orthographic mode, and then the 6 key for right side view in order to properly line this up. Scale it up. Use my little widget handles here to move it into place. The little ring in the middle allows me to freeform drag it in screen space. Can use the little scale widgets to scale along a given axis. In the Tool Options panel, you'll notice about midway down that I have Transform Whole Lattice checked. And what that does is it gives me a standard transform gizmo to manipulate the entire object. But if I uncheck that, I can now select individual points or segments for more localized control. As you can see here, I'm using the freeform lasso from the ePanel to drag select around a group of points, and you'll notice I have a gizmo that is centered on those selected points. Hit the 5 key to come out of orthographic view and look at it in perspective. Switch to the top view by hitting the 7 key on the number pad. Looks like I need to align my image plane to make sure it's lined up right down the origin of the grid. Must have overlooked that earlier. Just going to continue doing a little bit further tweaking, and then we will commit this to a layer. Switch to a side view, and let's go ahead and click on apply, or we could hit the enter key, and 3D Coat voxelizes it. In order to step out of the primitives tool, all I need to do is switch to something else, and now I can inspect the result. What I'm probably going to do is down-res this particular object in order to make it have a more dramatic smoothing effect. So click on the resample tool. I can drag the slider down to its nice low polygon number, and then just click smooth all until I get close to the smoothing result I want. So we now have our rib cage, or torso if you will, and then I can use the brush, hold down the shift key to smooth, and I'm going to turn on symmetry here. Hold down the shift key and continue to smooth some of these edges. I'll hit my 6 key on the number pad to go back to a side view. So now that we have a base to work from, we're going to use the Curves tool in order to create the tail section. And all I need to do is hover over an object with the Curves tool, and I can right click and drag to scale up the initial point the size that I want. I can simply left mouse click to create a point. The green point is just a preview of what you're going to actually apply. You can right click and drag over an object to scale the point before you actually click to apply it. Remember, as long as you're hovering over an object, which includes the image plane, you can right click and scale that initial preview dot. But if you try to right mouse click out an open space, then it's not going to work because 3D Coat assumes you want to navigate. Now when you left mouse button click over an existing point, 3D Coat will give you this gizmo which allows you to transform it. You can move it in screen space, you can move it along a given axis, you can scale it uniformly, or you can even squash it along a given axis. And when you click on other points while that gizmo is active, it will just switch that gizmo to that individual point. You can get out of it by hitting the escape key or right clicking over that gizmo. Let's now click on new curve to create a new section for the neck and the head area. I'll click to create the initial point, scale it down, click to create another, and if I want I can click in between points to create an intermediate one. I'll click on this point to activate the gizmo. Right click on that to deactivate the gizmo. We're now going to create the jawline by clicking on a point and dragging out a new extension. I'll click in the middle. I can middle mouse click to move that node on the fly without having to use a gizmo. Or just click on a point again to activate the gizmo. I'll create another extension by left mouse clicking on that one point and dragging out. Click in the middle of that curve in order to create an intermediate point. Create another extension there by left mouse clicking and dragging. Create another intermediate point there. Activate the gizmo. Just stretching those points. Just want to squash a little bit there. Stretch that. Move back down to the tail, squash that in just a bit. Click on the end point, right click to exit the gizmo, left mouse click and drag out to create a new extension or a new curve, right mouse click and drag to scale it down, middle mouse click and drag to move it. And click on this node to bring up the gizmo, and then stretch it horizontally. Create an intermediate point there. Again, I'll stretch that as well. Go to a side view so we can get a better vantage point. Start squashing some of these points. Okay, I think it looks about right so far. Just wanted to create a base object, nothing fancy at this point. So I click apply to actually commit that to the current layer. I'm going to undo and resample this layer to give it a little bit more resolution before we hit apply. I'll bring it up a little bit. Hit OK. Let's now go ahead and hit the apply button in the tool options panel, and 3D Cut will commit that to either voxels or surface mode on the layer you have selected. We want to now step out of the curves tool by selecting something else. So let's stop this video right here, and we'll pick up in the next one by using some of the sculpting brushes to begin blocking out some rough forms.